First of all, we will talk about article that is said economy that are open to trade go faster. Me, Dia Patricia, will explain about the summary that is given by our group. Openness to international trade plays a crucial role in driving economic growth, especially in developing countries. Evidence shows that nations like India and China experience rapid growth after liberalizing their trade policies. Similarly, post-World War II countries such as Japan and France thrive through open trade. Trade openness brings several benefits. It increases efficiently through global competition, provides access to advanced technologies, and promotes specialization based on comparative advantage. A key example is the Soviet Union, whose lack of trade openness contributed to its economic collapse due to missed innovation and inefficient production. However, trade openness alone isn't a magic solution. Countries also need macroeconomic stability and good governance. For example, Ivory Coast opened its trade but didn't grow significantly because of weak institutions. In conclusion, while not flawless, open economies are generally better equipped to seize growth opportunities, making trade openness a strong foundation for development.
Hello, my name is Mutiara Septiandini and my name is 54. Although openness to international trade is often praised as the key to economic growth, many critics argue that this policy can actually be detrimental to developing countries. Trade liberalization often leaves local industry overwhelmed by competition from cheaper imports, leading to deindustrialization and unemployment. In addition, dependence on primary commodity exports leaves countries vulnerable to global price fluctuations, while multinational corporations profit greatly without providing sustainable benefit to the domestic economy. Critics also point out that free trade often exacerbates inequality, as economic gains accrue to a small elite while workers and small producers are increasingly marginalized. Moreover, the pressure to meet global demand often comes at the expense of the environment through overexploitation of natural resources. Rather than being a universal solution, free trade without major protection and diversification policies can actually dependence of developing countries on global economic powers, as seen in the crisis in several Latin American and African countries. Therefore, a more selective and measured approach is needed so that the benefit of international trade do not turn into threats to economic sovereignty.
Liberalism in international relations theory posits that economic interdependence through open markets and free trade foster peace, cooperation, and mutual prosperity among states. The article also supports this view by providing empirical and theoretical backing for the idea that countries open to international trade experience faster economic growth. From a liberal perspective, this is not merely an economic outcome, but also a mechanism for reducing conflict and increasing cooperation in the international system. For example, India and China, which transition from closed to open trade policies and subsequently accelerate their growth, underline liberalism belief in the positive some nature of trade. When states specialize according to comparative advantage and engage in an international commerce, both parties gain, and this reducing the likelihood of zero-sum conflict. The article also discussed how post-World War II industrial countries like Japan, France, and Germany dismantled trade barrier and embraced new technologies leading to a rapid growth. This phenomenon consistent with the liberal view that institution and economic openness lead to stability and progress.
Yes, but open checks should be supported by the laws, established political system, and macroeconomic policies. Thus, the country should not depend solely on one commodity, because if that commodity fell in value, the countries will be affected. If we look at China for an example, the government opening the threat to attract more investors by offering the low taxes in ex- exclusive economic zone. So, such as Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Hainan. So, investor will be interesting to invest more capital there.
Hello, let me introduce myself. My name is Rosalinda Valentina Susanto, International Relations student ID 73. This time I want to discuss the material with the theme rich countries are more protectionist than poor countries. Rich or developed countries tend to promise more protectionism in maintaining their stability and national interest. This is to the money interest they have and the power that allows them to maintain them compared to poor or developing countries that's really more unlimited defense system and the tend to choose free trade for mutual benefit. Development countries focus more on efforts to maintain their own dominance and benefit. For example, when a country imports a lot of foreign goods and it turns out that imported products are very popular in the domestic market. Can shift the position of local product and reduce domestic profit. Cases like this have occurred, for example, between in United States and Indonesian tariff Trump. To overcome such things, developed countries such as US and European Union often implement anti-dumping policies as an effort to protect domestic industries from trade practices that are considered detrimental. Conclusion: the protectionist attitude of developed countries is not merely a form of dislike of free trade, but rather a paralysis strategy to maintain their national interests and economic stability. With the power they have, these countries tend to take steps that benefit them to the maximum, including through trade policy such as anti-dumping. This reflects the dynamics of interest in international relations, where its countries try to secure its position amidst global competition. That is all for me, and thank you.
In theory, free trade should empower developing nation, but in reality, it's often strengthening the grip of foreign powers. Just look what's happening in our nickel industry. Indonesia has long participated in a global trade, particularly in exporting raw materials like nickel. But here's the problem. When we sell our nickel in its raw form, we are selling it cheap and then we import the finished product with much higher price. To address this, Indonesia government launched a downstreaming policy with an ambitious goal to add value to raw materials and build national industry. The idea was simple: increase the value of our export, then grow the national economy, and reduce our dependence on foreign manufacturing. But here's when the problem shifts instead of disappearing. Indonesia doesn't have enough capital or advanced technology to build this massive industrial. So we open the doors to foreign investment. Today, many of the smelters and factories are built, owned, and operated by foreign companies. They control the production, the profit, and even much of the labor. We may be processing the nickel here, but we don't control the industry. The finished products are mostly exported to the country like China, when use our nickel to support their massive development project. Meanwhile, our local communities are still living in poverty and facing environmental degradation. So in the end, this isn't true economic independence. It's not a national success story. It's a new phase of dependency where we've moved up the supply chain but haven't moved up in power. So yes, Indonesia is growing, but we must ask who is really growing. This is not the kind of growth we should be proud of.